Well, hey, how y'all doing out there today? Listen, a lot of us out here that are older, especially my age, I'm 54. We kind of look back at some of y'all youngins and some of the things that are going on in society today, and we think, wow, people really think they got it tough, or really think things are bad, or they can't see uh, that there's so many sick children, that there's just obesity and hyperactivity, or what you want to call ADHD or ADD is rampant. Autism, all these sicknesses and diseases are just running rampant across this country. Yet, 40, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was nowhere near this way. And we kind of bring up how we lived or looked at our past, and it ain't that our grandmama still switched us, or that we had to eat grits for breakfast. It was just that at that time, really, people my age know, they'll tell you there was hardly any obese kids in the class. Hardly anybody was sick. There were no asthma inhalers in the teacher's drawer or bottles of Ritalin. Matter of fact, there wasn't any medications in the teacher's drawer. You went to the nurse for any kind of medication. Times were tougher, but they were simpler. A lot of people did with what they had, and being poor wasn't so much a social standing as it was just a way of life. You were poor and you did the best you could. Everybody did the best they could. It's always been hard times, but it's how we looked at it back then. But also back then, I want to point out that even in the television programming, it showed tough life. It showed life the way it was back then. And somebody was acting hysterical, they get popped in the face. We talked about this many times, the way things have changed and kind of softened up a little bit. But it also showed a lot of things about taking care of the environment. You had Woody the Owl, give a hoot, don't pollute, and the Indian crying by the pollution, and recycle was on everything. Recycle everything, and the 60s, 70s, and 80s. This was almost in every bit of television programming, in the commercials, paying attention to our environment, dealing with what we had, even making the vehicles smaller and using less gasoline, and all of this. And then there was a little bit of a lull, and then all of a sudden that went away. And I'm gonna tell you about the time period this happened. This happened about the same time when they had the Rio Earth Summit down there in Rio de Janeiro, 1992, and all the nations at the time, 119 nations, signed on to the Agenda 21, population control. They knew something then. They knew that no matter what, the planet, the relationship with the sun, whatever it is, was going to happen naturally. These large cycles that come across this very volatile and emotional planet, something was coming up, and they knew that they couldn't stop it. And they knew that it was going to change the world, the way we looked at it, the electrical world, running our generators off burning fuel, all these things. And then all of a sudden, it didn't seem to matter anymore. The 90s, just about especially after the Agenda 21, the Rio Earth Summit in 1992. What all of a sudden the SUVs got popular. Instead of making smaller vehicles, we went right back to making the same big giant gas guzzlers. Gas prices would roller coaster, but for the most part would stay cheap. And I mean, I don't know. I used the way we looked at everything just all of a sudden changed back to over consuming. Um, the corporations just making us more and more trinkets and gadgets, and just consuming more and more and more. I came up with, you can't tell me it wasn't there. You can't tell me it wasn't programmed in my mind to be a little um, uh, environmentalist, to take care of the planet, to just do with what we needed, to not use certain things, to recycle, to replenish, to sustain. And then all of a sudden it changed. Well, also with this change, if y'all pay attention, came the spraying of the skies and our children getting sick, and our adults all of a sudden mental disorders that dealt with the nervous system, primarily hyper disorders, ADHD, the adult version, the cure always, or the symptom reliever always being an amphetamine or another crazy chemical that would seem crazy to get to somebody that you would think would make them hyper, actually. So the autism rate going up, these children being born in just large numbers, the abortion rate going up since 1992, especially with making it a right. All of these things, 51% of our children since 1992 are now ill. But when I was coming up, it was like 8 to 12%, maybe depending on the region. 8 to 12% of the children might have, 1 out of 10, like I was telling you, that people my age saw in a classroom, 1 out of 10 might have had an issue. We thought that we could, um, you know, work around the illnesses, work around the problems with these special children that needed special attention. They were becoming so prominent in our schools. The numbers were growing, and we worked around it with rules and laws and don't bully and treat these people nice and all this. But the whole time we never really paid attention to the growing numbers themselves. Why were the numbers getting larger and larger? The very corporation that we fed, the very thing that we wanted to make our lives easier, to make things more convenient, to I don't know, to coddle our kids a little bit better, to maybe they'll have something better than we had, because the people before us wanted something better than they had. They lived through the Great Depression. But somewhere we just lost it, and the corporations took advantage of this. Now we're the consumers. So I'm not ever going to, when we can never, we the people, y'all, us, all of us human beings, we can't shun responsibility for us being the locust being fed, but the way it was fed to us slowly since 92. Look at what's happened since 1992. And those of y'all my age know exactly what I'm talking about, because you lived through it. This isn't somebody's opinion. This isn't something we read in a book. This isn't what history or his story is telling us. It's what we lived through. We were once healthy, and when we were number one in education in the world. We were number one in health in the world. We were very charitable. We had less of the wars and aggression that we had. Sure, we were living in this big Cold War where superpower banks were fighting it out, but it didn't affect our lives. Or, I mean, we wished peace on people. We got along with people. We had better social interactions with each other. It was all because of health. And what they've allowed the food to become is to make money, not because we're running out of food, not because there's less food, not because you can't grow your own food. Sure, they've made all this difficult and almost impossible for many of you to do. But the whole thing was just to give you something cheap. It was also to hide their toxic byproducts of the new industrial revolution, which is technology and all these things, these different types of metals, these different types of plastics that they've made. I mean, it's just made our planet toxic. It's made us toxic. The toxic byproduct from aluminum back from the 40s and all, they didn't know what to do with it. So what they do? They put it in the water. Around 1948, with the instructions from those Nazi scientists from Operation Paperclip, to make the whole, just to hide their toxic waste where they didn't have to pay for it, and to make a docile, obedient slave group, is what they did, the American people, by putting fluoride in our water. There's one of the biggest examples of how us being the overconsumers have made our own selves unhealthy. We're focused on all these other things that kill us, like war and guns and murder in the street and crime, but we don't pay attention to the number one killers: heart disease and cancer. Both man-made, both caused by the way we live, both caused by the things that are sold to us and that we buy and that we consume. Whether it be the food, the water, the drink, whatever you're doing, it's got something in it that's really no good. And we all know that. And we wonder, we go around and wonder, wow, man, what am I supposed to do? I try to live in balance. I try to eat healthy a little bit here so I can enjoy a little something here. I mean, the only closest store to me is a dollar store. I can only get these kind of foods, whatever. I don't know what to tell you. The thing is, the number one thing is to realize it and understand how you've been played, how we've all used to really be a healthy nation. And when we were a better nation. I'm not ever saying that America was great. I'm not getting to the politicized side of this. I'm getting to the reality of it. Back then in the 50s and 60s and 70s, y'all, we were the healthiest. We were the brightest. Yeah, we had bad social problems. But it always seems to be something, don't there? Always seems to be something. We had bad social problems, and of course we had the New World Order just beginning to rear its ugly head and decide how it was going to run the world. And then around the early 90s, late 80s and early 90s, when they really figured out what was going to happen to this planet, and they saw that it was going to change, they started selling their empires. They started giving up on protecting the planet. They started giving up on recycling and using what we already have made, or reusing the toxic materials that we can already reuse that we had already made. So yeah, you got to see how all this has happened to us. I love solutions in everything, but the solution to this one is just to let what's going to happen happen. I'm sorry, y'all. We can't stop it anyway. I mean, you can't stop Mother Earth. She is what she is, and but we can demand or seek the information already out there, and the information we need how to survive this, how to stop what we're doing now, to stop our addictive behavior to a spoon-fed society that has done nothing but make us weak and unhealthy. And that's the reality of this whole video right here, this whole point I'm trying to make. We are all weaker and sicker than we've ever been in the history of mankind. And it's supposed to be in the country that was supposed to be the smartest and the most healthiest, and were at one time. So what happened over 40 years? What's happened over the last 100 years? What's happened over the whole time period that we started inventing things to make our life better, and to make a pill instead of using natural means, to make money instead of common sense. Money rules everything. So that took away. I mean, because look, I've said it before and said it again. You got your cell phone with everything in the world on it. A very high-tech piece of equipment, and very useful in many ways, and dangerous in a lot of others. Yet we're still on the same gasoline engine for the last 125 years. We're still doing the things that we even said we would never do again, and made laws against it, and then we just change those laws and start doing them again. How we've gone back to the destruction of our planet, and not concentrating even on mass media such as the TV, and concentrating on coexisting and cleaning our planet. They don't care because they know it don't matter, but it does matter to you, because the planet's health is your health. We live on her. She's not benefiting by us being here. That's for damn sure. We live on her. All life on planet Earth sustains from and by planet Earth. So whether you look at her as an entity, or whether you look at her as just an oxygen bottle to a person dying, suffocating, it don't matter. Water to a fish, it don't matter. She sustains all this life because we're on this planet. When she's healthy, we're healthy. When she's not, we're not. And of course, when it looks like when she's at war, we're at war. We have been on here a very short period of time, but we've done a lot of damage. We haven't done all the damage, like I said. Some of this coming, and some of this they've known since 1992, at least, when they agreed on certain population controls and restrictions. They basically they knew that all this was coming. So we need to know what's coming. I'm sure mass hysteria and crazy anarchy would happen if we knew, but still, that doesn't mean we shouldn't know. At least as individuals, somewhere inside of you, you know that there's an internal conflict. You see the way things that you want to live, like the house, the job, the system, and then you know what's right and wrong for the planet and for life. Period. For life. Period. So always remember that. Don't lose contact, but find balance. We have to find balance, and we have to find solutions for the aftermath of what we know is in, whether it's a man-made collapse like financial collapse, or another world war, or if it's just natural evolution of this planet, cycles that come around all the time and that we can't stop. Either way, we need to be knowledgeable and prepared for it, and look at how we've been made weaker and sicker. So maybe not so we can't deal with it. Maybe so we won't survive it. I don't know. That's what I want to find out. And the solution is unity, brotherhood, and coexisting with this planet. So love yourself so you can love your brother, and we can all love this planet, and maybe she'll show us some love back, and we'll get through this. That's what I'm hoping for. I really am. Peace. I love you, and don't live in fear.